Malaysia thought that it would be a good idea to test FIFA's reflexes. This, it turns out, was a bad idea for Malaysia. FIFA's reflexes, pretty good, pretty sharp, actually very good. Like, shut Malaysia right down on this. So Malaysia played Vietnam in a friendly over the summer. They beat them 4-0. And one of the big takeaways for Malaysia was they had 7 new players on the team. Now, the way this had been advertised, right, was that this was a drive to find people with Malaysian heritage around the world, which is very, very smart. But where this story is headed actually kind of has nothing to do with that. But it also raises an interesting, different question, which I really enjoy, which is how close do your ties have to be to a country in order to get eligibility? FIFA has all sorts of different rules, but at the end of those rules, it is kind of left up to interpretation a little bit. And how much of a connection can you have with that country to be able to play for them? A question that is, in the globalized world where people are moving around all the time, going to be more and more and more and more and more important, right? Because people are born one place, they move to another place. You know, it happens more and more. I mean, you see, like, it's not just the U.S. national team anymore. Morocco makes the semifinal. The majority of that team were not born in Morocco. I don't have any issue with that at all, by the way. But back to Malaysia, they have these 7 new players that come from this drive to try and find players with Malaysian ancestry. And now FIFA has sanctioned the Malaysian Football Association and those 7 players. The 7 players have been banned for a year. The federation's been fined. The players have been fined. The match was against Vietnam in the 3rd round qualifiers of the Asian Cup. I believe that match has to be forfeit, although for some reason in this official press release from FIFA, it hasn't been, right? Following regular proceedings, all these things have been done. They've paid the fine. The players are suspended, whatever. And the matter of the player's eligibility to play for the team has been referred to the FIFA disciplinary committee, right? So what I'm thinking when I read this, right, and maybe your initial reaction too is, oh, these guys, you know, they rushed them into the team too quick. They basically applied for, you know, to be able to play for the team, and that application was never fully approved. Turns out that's not really what happened at all, okay? Turns out it's much weirder than that. But who are these 7 players, right? Shout out to Yahoo News, who actually put together a list of all 7. Facundo Tomas Garces, who's an Argentinian guy who recently became the first naturalized Malaysian to play in Spain's La Liga. He's been playing at Deportivo Alaves. He was controversially granted Malaysian citizenship on June 2nd, just days before his international debut. They don't actually list out his connection to Malaysia there. Also known as Gabriel Felipe Arocha, or Gabriel Palmero, who's this dude. Arocha's 23-year-old Spanish-born left-back who received Malaysian citizenship on March 19th. He developed in the youth systems of Spain. Arocha claims eligibility through unspecified Spanish-Malaysian ancestry, a connection that is now obviously under investigation. Rodrigo Julian Holgado of Argentina is a 29-year-old who's had a long career through Mexico, Chile, and Argentina, plays for America de Cali and Colombia. He was granted citizenship, claiming eligibility through his grandmother, who was reportedly born in Malaysia. Other sanctioned players are Imono Javier Machuca, who's from Argentina. He claims Malaysian descent from Sabah through his mother. João Vitor Brandão Figueiredo from Brazil. The forward who has Malaysian heritage is traced to his grandmother from Negiri Sembilan, apparently. And then 2 Spanish guys, one who has roots from his mother, apparently, being from Malaysia, and the other one is a naturalized player whose specific heritage claims and detailed history are not been widely disclosed. Just a guy that basically spawned in on the national team. So there are a few guys, right, that have claims, a grandparent or a parent that's Malaysian. There are a few guys where those claims either haven't been made publicly because this is all just something that's unfolding, or literally don't exist at all. Right, but there was the idea that there were tenuous claims for these 7 players, that they were searching for some sort of Malaysian diaspora, and it's possible that there's a pretty big one. Malaysia is one of those countries that you forget how big it is, right? There are nearly 36 million people in Malaysia. This is not a pipsqueak country, okay? You have the opportunity for people to be from Malaysia and end up in other places, right? So I believe that, and I believe that maybe they just filed all this paperwork incorrectly. But then you start to see stuff like this from the Wall Pass Journal. According to FIFA, the issue is not whether the Malaysian Federation followed the process to formally have these players be registered for the Malaysian national team, but rather the problem lies that the documents submitted by the Malaysian Federation, the problem lies with those documents. The documents were doctored, which that's just ridiculous. They got through the process. The only reason FIFA is sanctioning them now is they received complaints, I'm assuming from Vietnam, but maybe somebody else that was like, hey, don't think these guys are fully legal. FIFA goes back and looks at the paperwork again, and they're like, holy shit, these documents are doctored. So Malaysia isn't out here like trying to get these guys approved and then just playing them prematurely. They actually created, according to FIFA, fake documents that they then submitted to FIFA, got approved, these guys played, and then all of a sudden they look at it, under a microscope, and they're like, these documents are fake. Here's a quote pulled from somebody. Strange, FIFA already granted approval as per the process. That means FIFA had already vetted the documents and done the necessary due diligence before allowing the 7 to play for Malaysia. Why change their minds? Who lodged the complaint? Well, apparently, whoever lodged the complaint got them to look close enough to be able to discover that the documents themselves were forged. And in that case, even if you find out that the players are eligible for Malaysia, which it sounds like at least half of these guys definitely have a solid claim at being eligible for Malaysia, there's still going to be punishments doled out for this, right? Like, this is still a fully punishable offense if you were submitting false documents to FIFA. This is insane. This is a federation of a country with like a fully functioning national league, the Malaysian Super League, a national team that at least sometimes is able to be competitive, particularly in the Southeast Asian events. They can compete at a level with Vietnam. Obviously, they beat them, and like Indonesia and these other teams that are, a step below your Saudi Arabia's and Asian competition, but they're still there. I mean, Indonesia, I think, has managed to back into the final round of World Cup qualifying in Asia, which is a huge achievement for Southeast Asian teams in general. And Malaysia and Indonesia on the same field will be a very competitive match. So this is not some team that's 190th in the world that's doing this either to try and just get around some wall. This is a team that is, I would say, if I had to guess, 110, 123rd. They're 123rd in the world. I was kind of hoping I hit it exactly. That would have made me look like a badass. Maybe we can edit it to make it look like I hit it exactly. This is YouTube after all. Anyways, this is an actual functioning team is the point that I'm trying to make, that is apparently forged documents they submitted to FIFA to try and sneak 7 guys in, which you're going to notice, because even though we're not paying attention to Southeast Asian football, Southeast Asian people are. They love the sport. In matchups between Malaysia and Vietnam get a huge audience. People really know the players. They're paying attention a ton. There's a lot of money behind it. They want their teams to win. And so when Malaysia brings in 7 new players with Spanish names that just got citizenship, it's going to be put under a microscope. And this was going to be figured out. Like, there is no way Malaysia thought they were going to be able to get away with this long term if they actually forged the documents. Although clearly they did, because they'd already gone through the process and everything had been approved as they went through the process. So somebody was sitting in the back of an office smiling somewhere thinking that they'd actually managed to get away with all of this when in fact they hadn't. And it was just going to take them beating Vietnam by a couple of goals for Vietnam to be like, that guy, all those guys, actually. Now, here's the question. Do I think the players should be suspended? If the players didn't know that the documents have been forged, particularly a couple of guys that are like, yo, my mom's from Malaysia, I feel bad for those players if they do end up getting suspended for a year. Because they trusted the federation to be able to submit that paperwork appropriately as long as their mom is actually from Malaysia, as long as they're not like in on the con here. The whole grandparent thing, I don't know how much that counts. That's into that kind of gray area, I guess. I don't know. If your grandparents born in Malaysia, you know what? I'll give it to you too, honestly. Why not? But I enjoy, personally, those stories of somebody like Ben Brereton reconnecting with his roots that had been lost when he is, familially connected to Chile, and he becomes Ben Brereton Diaz. And that stuff is really cool to me. I enjoy having 1 or 2 random ass German-speaking American dudes on the U.S. national. I think it's fun. Right? It's part of America. It's part of Chile in that case. It's part of Malaysia, is that there's these, people from Malaysia that have moved away, but now those people that have moved away can help the place that they came from because their grandson is able to play for the national team, right? Like, that stuff is cool to me. I can understand, like, great-grandparents probably where I'm going to draw the line. You probably should have at least known this person. I realize not everybody's lucky enough to know their grandparents, but you get the general idea. You should be in lifetime striking distance of the person that you're related to in that way. If those people end up getting suspended for a year, the point is I'm sad for them. It sounds like there's a couple of these guys, their connection to Malaysia is incredibly tenuous to begin with, or maybe difficult to prove. But if they can prove that connection and that they had nothing to do with forging these documents, my number one working theory, then I'm okay with, like, they shouldn't be suspended. They should go through the process properly and fill out the proper paperwork, whatever that is, and then play for the national team if they can. But I think Malaysia might have done this because they wanted to qualify for the Asian Cup. And they knew that if they filled all this shit out properly, it would take way longer to get all these guys onto the team. It would just take too long. So I think Malaysia sat down. I don't think they're trying to sneak people into the national. Honestly, I don't think they're trying to sneak people into the national team that have no Malaysian connection and have also never lived in Malaysia. Because at least with countries like Qatar, what they do is they bring players to their national league. They live in the country for a significant amount of time, 6 years, and then they play for the national team. That, to me, doesn't bother me as much as it bothers other people. Right? Whether you got the guys from West Africa that play for Kyrgyzstan, well, they've been playing in the Kyrgyzstani league for 5 years, right? You've lived in the country. If you live somewhere for 5 years, you develop a connection with that place. You start speaking the language a little bit. Like, I'm cool with that. But nobody really has ever tried to sneak somebody into a national team that's never lived there and has no connection to it. I think all these guys have some connection to Malaysia, or at least they told Malaysia that they do. And then Malaysia is just sitting there like, well, we want these guys to play as quickly as possible. So they forged some of the paperwork so that they can submit it faster and get these guys onto the team. A plan that clearly worked, although it was doomed to fail. Because there is simply too many eyeballs on Southeast Asian football for you to be able to just sneak 7 dudes that everybody's already going to be suspicious about onto your national team. You need really, like Ben Brereton Diaz had that, like the story. You almost need to get the story out into the public. Like, this is the connection. This is what happened. I always heard about Malaysia from my grandmother, or my mom always talked about how my grandmother was always cooking Malaysian food or whatever. Right? You get that story out there. You go, okay, all of a sudden everybody's comfortable with it, and you start selling Coca-Cola in Malaysia in commercials. But they didn't do that. They tried to rush these guys into the team. They got caught, and now Malaysia's up shit creek without a paddle. So that's fun. But at least the president, Hannah Yeoh, who's the youth and sports minister, is saying that they're going to appeal. So we'll see what comes out in the appeal, I guess.